Federal High Court in Benin City has declined jurisdiction in the case filed by the People's Democratic Party and the suspended 18 local government chairmen in Edo State. Presiding Judge Justice Babatunde Quadri ruled on the matter on Friday. The Central's correspondent Israel Eferobor has more.
It was a brief but decisive hearing at the Federal High Court in Benin City. The suit filed by the People's Democratic Party and the 18 suspended council chairmen seeking to overturn their suspension was dismissed, at least for now. The local government chairmen were suspended in December 2024 by the Edo State House of Assembly following a petition from Governor Monday Okwebolo. The governor accused them of insubordination and failure to submit financial records.
The court gave a decision today. And of course, the court declined jurisdiction because the Federal High Court can only adjudicate on matters within the provisions of Section 251, Sub 1 of the 1999 Constitution that lists areas for which the Federal High Court has jurisdiction. And the court even said that even if you have a decision of the State High Court, the Federal High Court is not a place to come and enforce it. So the court declined jurisdiction, describing it as an abuse of judicial process.
Barrister Nwata explained the legal basis for the court's decision.
It was a matter that involves the interpretation of the state law, just as the court rightly noted, falls within the provisions of Section 272 of the Constitution that confers the State High Court with unlimited jurisdiction. And the court even said that even if you have a decision of the State High Court, the Federal High Court is not a place to come and enforce it. But rather, much as the defendants in that case have a right of appeal, you can go to the State High Court to talk of enforcement. So the court declined jurisdiction, describing it as an abuse of judicial process.
Counsel to the People's Democratic Party and the 18 suspended local government chairmen unveiled their next line of action.
All the court did was deliver ruling to decline jurisdiction, saying that since there are other similar matters in the Edo State judiciary, that the matter should be transferred to the Edo State High Court for the Edo State High Court to determine the question of whether the Edo State House of Assembly has the power to suspend or remove the democratically elected chairman, that the Federal High Court transfer the matter for continuation in the Edo State High Court.
With this ruling, the battle over who controls the grassroots in Edo State shifts back to the state's judiciary, leaving the suspended chairman once again in limbo. In Edo State, for News Central, Israel Eferobor.
Well, to help us make sense of this, we're joined by a legal practitioner, Elvis Asia. Elvis, thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me on the program.
So, according to the ruling, state governors cannot dissolve democratically elected councils or install caretaker committees and demand disbursement of local funds through them. How would you react to this?
The decision of the court is very clear. I'm quite surprised that in the first place, the Federal High Court was approached on an issue such as this. The question, in my view, that has been submitted to the court is whether or not suspension of the government chairman by the Edo State House of Assembly, as backed by the governor, it's something that is illegal. There's no provision in the Constitution that you can possibly situate the Federal High Court in there. The constitutional provision on the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court is very limited. It's very clear on the matters that the Federal High Court can adjudicate on. And so the court is quite right on the decision, in my view. Of course, we're also aware that there are other pending cases arising from what has happened to the government system in Edo State at the State High Court. So it would be best to warehouse all the cases there, in order for an effective resolution of the matters. So, to me, in my view, this decision is quite in line with the express provision of the Constitution.
All right, so for you, what would you consider as the basis of the allegations? I mean, we're talking about gross misconduct, insubordination, financial mismanagement leveled against the local council chairman. We're even looking at the veracity of these claims by the state government.
Well, I mean, much has been said about what happened in Edo State, and the clear position or the clear issue is that this is a political movement. The APC, being led by the government currently, wants to consolidate their powers in the state, and in order to do that, they need to grab the local government system. And unfortunately, they went about doing so outside of the dictates of the law by this gross unconstitutional suspension that was initially done. The suspension had no basis within Section 7 and 8 of the 1999 Constitution. It has no basis even under the Edo State local government law of 2000 as amended. And then we know that subsequently they took steps, to do what, in street parlance, you can say a kangaroo arrangement to impeach the chairman and their vice in an attempt to give some legal cloak on, to what they're doing. What they have done is clearly unconstitutional. The basis of the investigation, the alleged misconduct, is nothing but a political creation to achieve a political aim. What is the alleged alleged insubordination that the governor requested for accounts that were not provided? And the question you ask is, does the governor even have the power to ask for the accounts of the local government system? The Supreme Court has decided that local government is independent and that they are entitled to their funds, they are entitled to spend it the way they want, and that is why they have a legislative arm that would, do budgeting and all of that, just like you have at the state level. And so the governor has no power to even make a request that he was making. And so the point is that this has nothing to do with the law. This has nothing to do with doing the right thing. Yes, we know that a lot has happened at the government system in terms of corruption and in terms of the pocketing of the funds of the government by successive administration in Edo State and other states of the federation. But in order to do that, you have to if you want to fix that problem, you have to do so by complying with the Supreme Court decision on the independence of the local government system and in terms of their finances. You have to do that by respecting the rule of law. You can't do that by this act of political thuggery that has happened in Edo State at local government level, the government chairman being chased out. And so, quite frankly, this is nothing but politics taking too far.
Would there be consequences for this? Because I had an interaction with the counsel to the Edo State government a couple of hours ago, and he said that the Edo State government is not in violation or in contempt of the Supreme Court ruling granted in July 2024 that grants local governments autonomy, financial autonomy. So where do we draw the lines? And can there be consequences for this sort of violation, so to speak?
I don't agree with that. I stand by what I have always said about this issue, that this is gross violation of the Constitution, gross disregard for the decision of the Supreme Court. And we know that, I think sometime in about 2 weeks ago, thereabout in May, the so-called West local government, chairman and vice had gone to court, and the High Court of Edo State nullified, one of the impeachments that were done in the Circle West. Because what has happened in Edo State is that, I don't even know whether the issue of suspension is even still relevant. Because after the suspension, when the outcry came out, even the Attorney General made a point about the fact that what they are doing is unconstitutional. They now took other steps. They claimed they had impeached local government chairmen through the legislative arm of local government councils. And so the current situation now that the local chairmen are facing is the alleged impeachment that was carried out by the legislative arm, again, which was in gross violation of local government law, in gross violation of due process and the rule of law. And so the Edo State High Court has made a decision on one of the cases that it was a flagrant violation of the Constitution and the law. and order that they be restored. Damages was also awarded. So there should be consequences. And there are other cases that are pending. And if this particular case is anything to go by, we expect that other judges, very courageous judges, of course, depending on the facts and circumstances as presented in individual cases, would also do justice and ensure that our politicians play by the rules. Nobody's saying you shouldn't play politics, but just play by the rules.
So when you say play by the rules and we talk about justice, now that the case has been transferred to the State High Court, what are your predictions?
Well, I mean, I just give an example of what the State High Court has done in a similar situation to what it was before the Federal High Court. In the first place, there was no need for the matter to have gone to the Federal High Court in the first place. And so that decision of the Federal High Court is really a clear restatement of the very clear provisions of the Constitution and the laws of this country. And so it is expected now that the High Court will look at these matters and interpret the Constitution, look at the Supreme Court decision, and of course look at the peculiar facts and circumstances as presented, and do justice. The matter is not before the court. I cannot sit here and dictate to the judge or the courts what decision that should be made. But what I can say is that they should look at all the facts and circumstances, and ensure that the rule of law is obeyed, ensure that our democracy is not threatened by this action, this gross disregard for the law and the rules of the country, and ensure that local government system is protected. We need to have a local government system that can stand on its own. A local government system, such as we had in 1999. Between 1999 and 2003, we had a local government system that was fairly functional. As a child who grew up in a village, I saw firsthand what local government system can do for you. But today we have lost it because the funds for the local government has been completely taken by the governors and the state government. And so we need to set precedent that will ensure that we protect this. This is beyond a mere case of suspension, a mere case of impeachment. This is, trying to give effect and ensuring that people at the grassroots can have a voice and they can feel the impact of governance.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elvis Asia, for sharing your thoughts with us.